Okay, we are going to have a look at damage, taking damage. Damage is caused in two different ways. You have endurance damage and attribute damage. Endurance damage represents you being exhausted, or the little nicks and scrapes and things like that, and your concentration waning. Attribute damage represents significant wounds that have been dealt to you. You die when any of your attributes reaches -5. NPCs die when any attribute reaches 0. Each weapon has an endurance and a crit damage stat. So you've got the two here. You can see endurance damage, end damage, and crit damage. Okay? End damage is the damage that it deals to your endurance, and crit damage is what it deals to your attribute. Crit damage is reduced by your armor. So if you get hit by a crit 4 attack and you have 3 armor, you will take 1 attribute damage. But let's walk through how that happens. So let's say that you get hit by a rifle that deals 3 endurance damage and 4 crit damage. So you're hit, you automatically take the 3 endurance damage. That's automatic. Then the 4 crit damage, so when they attack you, they can spend a 6 on a critical hit. And what this means is that the crit damage is applied to your attribute. So you've got armor 3, crit damage 4, so you would take 1 attribute damage. But to determine what attribute is damaged, your attacker rolls a d6. So that's a 5. And so you would take 1 intelligence damage, and you would mark that next to that. When you reach 0 endurance, every attack against you causes an automatic critical hit. So for that attack before, where that was a 6, it would score a critical hit automatically if you had 0 endurance. And this 6 can be spent on something else. The other strong hit option that everybody has access to is critical boost. When your target is reduced to 0 endurance, you may spend any 6 to boost all attribute damage or crit damage by 1. So rather than it being a 4 crit damage attack, it would be a 5 crit damage attack against you. So, assuming you got hit again, you're at 0 endurance, or the attack reduces you to 0 endurance. You take an automatic critical hit, and that 6 is spent on a critical boost, so it would be 5. And that would be applied to your reflex of 5, minus your armor, 3. You would take 2 reflex damage, which in this instance reduces you to 0, which doesn't kill you, but if you're an NPC, you would die. If at any time any of your attributes reach a negative value, you start bleeding. And you take 1 automatic attribute damage that is not reduced by your armor at the start of your turn. Just roll a d6 to determine what attribute is done, and that will continue until you receive first aid. So, to heal damage, you look at your reference sheet and you've got 4 ways of healing damage here. You've got first aid, which is used for stopping bleeding. You've got paramedics. First aid can be rolled during combat. Someone needs to move up to you and they can make a first aid roll on you. They just need to get a 10. Paramedics is done immediately after combat. And you need to roll that, and you need to get at least a 12. And you can only roll it once, and that will heal 2 damage. And that 2 damage can be split between 2 different characters, or both applied to the same character, and can only heal damage that was dealt that combat. So if your team takes too much attribute damage during combat, paramedics won't be able to heal it all, or it could be helpful to have a couple of people as good at healing. The other 2 ways are extended care and surgery, and these are spare time rolls. And they will actually cost spare time points to heal. Extended Care requires a toolbox and 2 spare time rolls of a 12, and it heals 1 of all attributes to 1 character. Surgery requires a workshop, and it requires 2 rolls of 16, and it will heal 1 attribute of 8 points. So the reason why I've done damage like this is the reason I want endurance damage, because I want people to feel like most attacks do something. They're a little bit like hit points. You shoot, you may not score a critical hit, but you do something. You're wearing them down. I also want that slight little bit of randomness. So even though, like, anyone with a gun, you should take seriously. That security guard that you've just stolen from the store, and the security guard is shooting at you with their pistol, even though you know they're not going to wear your endurance down, that's an unlucky hit, you know, a roll of a 6, and that could do attribute damage to you. So there's a sense of seriousness to it. Also, the reason why I've done attribute damage, and they linger from session to session if you're not careful, is that wounding or maiming a character is actually more scary than death, because it cripples your character a little bit, so it helps you to take it a little bit more seriously. Now, of course, there's various traits and things that can improve your ability to deal damage. So there's traits that can let's say you damage a random attribute, you can increase that or minus it by 1. So you could damage stat 4 or 6, not just 5. Also, there's that teamwork element to it. Some weapons are good at doing endurance damage, while some weapons are good at doing crit damage, attribute damage. So shotguns are great for endurance damage, but rifles and heavy weapons can be great for attribute damage, for taking people down. So you get some characters that are good for, like, wearing their endurance right down to make the target vulnerable, and then you've got those other characters that are good at doing the attribute damage, which is the actual final hits.